Class of 71 Conference on Equity and Justice. Last night we had the great privilege of viewing the award-winning documentary College Behind Bars and gathered in small groups to raise questions and awareness about incarceration, injustice, race in America, and the transformative power of education. On behalf of the Student Diversity Committee, the Social Justice Club, and the entire St. Andrews community, I am thrilled to welcome and introduce two alumni of the Bard Prison Initiative who were featured in this film, Giovanni Hernandez and Tamika Green. Giovanni is a Bronx, New York native. He is a graduate of Bard College where he majored in literature with a minor in art history. He is currently an associate at Adams Buckner Advisors and has enjoyed working on accounts such as the successful hashtag Turn on the Tap campaign and learning about the different components to policy and change. In addition to his work at the firm, Giovanni is a social justice advocate working to address the issues of disenfranchised communities and those impacted by incarceration. He is also a founding member of Emergent Works, a tech nonprofit teaching the justice-impacted community tech and software engineering skills at no cost. Giovanni travels the country speaking at national conferences and cultural institutions across the country, extolling his belief in the transformative power of education. Please help me welcome Giovanni Hernandez. Tamika Graham is an advocate for access to higher education and incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people. She actively utilizes her public speaking skills, lived experience, and humble personality to motivate others to action. While being the campus director for Just Leadership USA, Tamika was one of the prominent faces of the hashtag Close Rikers and hashtag Free New York campaigns. She has engaged in advocacy with the Equity Alliance in Staten Island, BPI, hashtag less is more, hashtag halt solitaire, hashtag communities not cages, and other campaigns and organizations. Tamika is currently working at SUS, Services for the Underserved, as a peer specialist serving the homeless population, and the lead national organizer for the Rugged Road to Recovery. Tamika has taught high school equivalency classes at the Brownsville Community Justice Center and Dreams Youth Build in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York, with the BPI Treatment Alternatives for Safe Communities program. She is also a Rehabilitation Through the Arts alumna and sits on their Alumni Advisory Committee. Please welcome, oh, and I should also mention she is joined today by her wife, who's also named Tamika, and their nephew, Darnell. Please welcome Tamika Graham. Will be facilitated by student leaders Heidi Forbes, Zachary McAlintal, Ashley McIntosh, Miguel Borja, and Ethan Williams. They will be asking some of the questions that were curated in your group discussions last night. We'll also take a few questions from the audience this afternoon as well. We ask at the conclusion of the program, you do not come to the stage. Our guests will be joining us in the faculty room, and you are welcome to bring your lunch and meet and greet them there. Thank you. One last announcement by Mrs. Dupre before we get started.
Okay, so after we're finished with the panel and our panelists have gone out of to the faculty room, I would like the entire third floor to come down and stay for a brief meeting right after. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Tamika and Mr. Giovanni. It is an honor to have you here, and we speak for the entire student body when we say we're so appreciated and took the time to be out with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And we're going to get started with our first question. So number one, can you tell us what motivated you to become a part of the BARD Prison Initiative program and what the process would have looked like to enroll?
Okay, so hi Tamika. When I got sentenced to 9 years in prison, and I realized that I spent the first 30 years of life going in and out of school, and I finished high school at 16, right? And I should have went to college then, but life led to some other things. But I spent the next 9 years wanting to go to school, but it just never happened. I just never had the time. Life was happening. And I figured I have 9 years in prison. There's no way in the world I'm going to go sit behind these walls in vain and not come out with something that was going to be tangible, something that was going to help me, once I got back into the free world. So there was no way that I was just going to do time the way you see it in prison movies. When you look at TV, you see jail one way, and when I was in there, I had to see it a different way.
First, let me say what a pleasure it is to be here. We both appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. Next, let me say, yes, I know I definitely need to ask ChatGPT to shorten my bio. It's a bit long. But no, it's funny. I'm the definition of someone who stumbled upon opportunity. I was peer pressured into applying for the BARD Prison Initiative at 21, having spent the previous 5 years of my life incarcerated. That interested me enough, just didn't want to change my routine, and I didn't have the interest in applying to a program that I knew would have changed my routine. So I was peer pressured by a friend of mine who was a student, and who obviously hadn't, gone through the experience himself, knew how I would benefit from that, right? Even if he didn't have the words to convey how me being in that program would benefit me. And so I fell into peer pressure and I applied. I really started, I studied and prepared like some other people did. I went and, I took the written exam, I did the interview, and I was accepted. And that was the starting point for me of just me without me realizing of the next chapter of my life, right? Because a couple months in, into my first semester, I was already not the same person I was when I started this semester. And so yeah, peer pressure, you know,
Positive peer pressure.
yeah, positive peer pressure. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I knew he didn't mean me harm, right? And so it's easy to be like, all right, I'll do this. But I can't honestly say that at that point in my life it was something that I was pursuing. You know, I was kind of just trying to like make it, you know, to the end of my incarceration at that point, survive, I guess. But now, having been through that experience, you know, I myself find myself on the other end, and I haven't done it so often of like peer pressure other people into applying, because now I know the benefits of, you know, the program and that experience for anyone.
And it's not a program that's like open to the whole population. Well, it's open for the whole population to apply themselves for, right? But it's like a lottery kind of, right?
Acceptance rate is 10%.
You have in the facility I was in, it was like 380 of us, and we had the classroom of the size of 8, right? So think about how many people have applied to the program, how many people sat down and, you know, took the entry exam and sat for the interviews and sat there anxiously waiting to see if they were going to get accepted. And it's like a real rigorous program, right? It's not like regular college. It's not like regular school, period, right? Like our professors sit down and they talk to us. We have actual conversation and stuff. It's not like you're a vessel, you sit there and we just feed everything into you and you get what we give you. No, we were able to learn who we were, learn how smart we were, and we were able to see and connect with others, you know, through the education. It was more of like an escape through prison, right? Like, away from the family, you're away from your friends, you're away from life as you know it, and it's like, what is there to do? Do I get in trouble further, or do I get myself together? And it was like the escape from the officers who are treating us like we're animals, you know, like we're not human beings that bleed the same way that they bleed, or, you know, breathe the same oxygen. You know, they were treating us like we were less than, but then we had the school, we had the college where we was able to go, and the professors looked at us as students, not as incarcerated individuals. They didn't look at us as a number, they looked at us as people, and we were able to grow because of that. So it just really helped with not really being in prison while being in prison.
So our second question is, how were you selected to participate in this documentary, and how did the filmmakers earn the trust of BPI students? How well do you feel your story was represented in the film?
So this is kind of a difficult question. So the way the documentary happened for me was the directors came in, and I'm a mother, and that's how they basically got me. They were parents, they were mothers themselves, and they were intrigued with the way we were inside doing the same thing, and possibly better than the ones that were outside were doing it. And they kind of pulled on my heartstrings, right, and let me know that they was here for a good cause, because people exploit people all the time, especially people who are underserved or incarcerated or, you know, less fortunate. We get exploited for everything. So when the film crew came, they just made us feel so comfortable, right? They wasn't invasive. They didn't make us feel like they were like in our business, right? Like we knew that they were here to not just help us, but to help anybody that came behind us. Because if anybody doesn't know, the whole purpose of the film basically was to have education, higher education reinstated back into the prison system. Because there were so many people for so long that didn't have the access to it, right? We had the crime bill where President Biden was part of it with Clinton, and, you know, they basically just stopped education inside of prisons. However, anybody knows Malcolm X, he was in prison, he got his education in prison, right? There were so many people who were great leaders that went to prison, came out, different people, and they changed and helped society. And they just took that from us when, you know, they locked us up and threw away the key. So now, you know, this is something that This is a privilege, right? Education, believe it or not, although it should be something that we should all have, we should all be able to be granted the access to, regardless of who you are or where you come from, it's not. It's really a privilege to be able to get an education, right? This is something that can't be taken from you, right? Whatever you put inside of here can never, no matter where you go, no matter what happens to you, can never be taken from you. That's what you keep. And it's how you use it, it's what you do with it that makes the difference. I'm sorry, I kind of lost the question. Sorry. So sometimes these questions are just, a way to get us to talk, but I like to really have like natural, casual conversations so that we can really get down to the nitty-gritty of things, right? That's just how I am. But when it comes to the documentary, they didn't exploit us, and that was the good thing. When it comes to how myself and other women are represented in the documentary, I don't feel that it completely tells our story as much. Of course, the prison system was around for the males a lot longer than it was for the women, and a lot of prisons and programs weren't prepared for the influx of women that were being incarcerated. So there really weren't too many programs and stuff for us. It's like the men's they had a bachelor's program, right? The women, we could only get associates, right? And when you look at the film, I'm sure you guys only seen like a clip, but if you look at the whole film, I feel like there's a large portion of the women population that's not there, not represented. But that's life, right? When you look at life, the women, we're the underdog. We've always been the underdog, even though we are the power, right? Like we're the power behind the men in the rest of this country. So in the film, I don't feel like we was represented the way we should have been, but it also shows how we're misrepresented in life, period, in general.
To keep it short, I will say that Lynn Novick and Sarah Botstein spent just as much time in the facility speaking to us without cameras as they did with cameras, right? They took the time to really get to know us as people, not necessarily interview us, but just like, let's talk. What's going on? How are your classes? And just building a trust that, one's personal story is something very, delicate, or at least one feels like it's very delicate, and one isn't necessarily always willing to share with anyone, but they took the time to, like Tamika said, build the trust. And through the trust, we were able to sort of, provide them with an authentic, just be authentic to ourselves before the camera, right? Like after a certain point, it almost felt like the cameras weren't even there because I was so comfortable to speaking to them, right? Like they were my friends at this point. And I think that kind of just helped the film be much more genuine, or for everyone involved.
So our third question is, what impact did being part of this program have on your mental health and emotional well-being while you were incarcerated?
Man, it had the most profound impact. I can't explain it, right? I feel like prior to having this experience, I was working with only part of the picture. Like there were pieces missing, whether on my chessboard, whether in my paintings, like whatever it was, there was things missing that they just didn't allow me to see things as clearly as I do now. And my education provided me with the tools to acquire those pieces and then to make sense of those pieces. Whether it's history, art, sociology, why I feel how I feel, right? Why statistically I was more likely to end up where I ended up than where you guys are now when I was born, just because of my circumstances. Like there were so many things that now make sense to me, that now allowed me to feel like I had more control over my life because I understood it better. You know what I mean? I understood where I stood. And so I knew where I could move, and how I could move, because, I saw more of the board before me. I had more pieces to work with. And so, yeah, it had such a profound impact on like my development as a person, both emotionally, you know, both in terms of like understanding my mental health and like why I react certain ways to certain things and like what I could be doing, you know, to the step. And just gave me the confidence to, you know, not feel overwhelmed by that. You know what I mean?
For me, it just basically helped me to see myself clearer, and through that, it helped me to be able to see others clearer and be able to get a better understanding of people just in general. You know, we pass a lot of judgment and stuff on people based on things we learn through life coming up, family, friends, TV, social media, and you shed those eyes. You know, you gain a scholarly eye, and you're able to see things different and clearer. And that's what it did for me.
Tamika, you were talking about earlier how like when you got an education, you became a student and like you were also incarcerated. Could you talk a little bit more about that dichotomy of like being incarcerated and then also being a student?
So it was difficult. You have the people that are incarcerated with you, and they're there for, you know, all kinds of reasons, and everybody does their jail time differently, right? And then you have the officers who are there collecting a paycheck, and they have ill thoughts because we're these animals that are receiving this free education, and they have to pay for it for them or for their children. But then you have the other side where there are some people that are incarcerated and they're looking up to you and they're cheering you on and rooting you on. And there were some officers that were like, hey, why are you in the yard? Don't you have class? Right? So you have to be very, very strong. And when I say strong, I mean in all aspects of the word, in order to be able to be in prison and then focus on life, education, and like the outside world, right? Like here in school now, right, you guys are away from your families. So you have to think about the outside, your families, your friends that you left to come here to get yourself together for whatever reason it is, whatever it is you're searching for, you're looking for, you're here doing it. But at the same time, you have those, I want to be here, I want to do this with my mom, I want to do this with my dad, I want to go see my friends, or I want to do this, but you can't, right? You're just stuck here. Right? You're stuck here. And it's like, you want me to focus on your schoolwork, but I want to do this, or you found out somebody got sick or something, right? Like, you have to deal with a lot, but you have to realize that you got to put yourself first. And if you can't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of anybody else. So you learn to kind of put up like a wall or a blanket of like separation and protection, so that way you can focus on the task at hand, which is one, I want to get home, I want to get out of prison, I don't need to be here, nobody should be here, it's time for me to go, right? But at the same time, what am I going to do when I get out of here? So I need to focus on what I'm going to do, get my plan together so I can get out, while still worrying about maybe having to watch my back because somebody might want to put a razor in my locker. Or somebody might not like that maybe I was talking to their friend or their girl or something, and they might want to try to set me up and have me thrown in a lock or something. Or maybe it's the officer just doesn't like, you know, that maybe I might be a little bit smarter than them, and they feel like I think I'm better than them, so they want to show me that, you know, they're the boss here, they're the king. So it's, you know, it's hard, but it's doable. Right? Anything that you put your mind to, it's cliche, but it's true. Anything you put your mind to, you can definitely do, regardless of what the circumstances are.
The question was on dichotomy of student prisoner. Yeah, I mean, I think the program, Barker Initiative, does a good job of helping anyone feel like they're a student. right? They hold you to the same standards they hold the students on campus. Professors come in and treat you as a student, not as a student who's incarcerated, not as someone who's incarcerated. You're a student, welcome to that classroom, you're a student, you better have your paper, they want to hear it, they don't care what you was in there for, like, it's not how this works in the classroom. I mean, the power dynamics are very much as they work with the on campus. And so it helps us adopt the identity of the student and feel like students and, you know, sort of feel like a student, you know, do the work like a student. And I think that my identity as a student definitely helped me navigate my identity as a person in a different, more positive way. I had more positive outcomes on that side because I was actively using what I was learning in classrooms and like my personal life, right? I was actively moving smarter, you know, so to speak. And so the dichotomy, while it's not one that's always easy to navigate, as the one between a student and a teenager, isn't always easy to navigate, right? There are a lot of responsibilities that are, you know, set upon a student that, you know, sometimes the teenager just doesn't want to do the work. Sometimes it's tired. They rather go play with their, you know, go play, you know, basketball with their friends. You know, any number of other things, but if you figure it out, sometimes, you know, discipline, responsibility, sense of responsibility, whatever it is. It wasn't always easy, but I was able to figure it out. And figuring it out, I was able to just stay out of trouble outside of the classroom, right? Like, being in school definitely helped me have a much better, positive day-to-day, and like my outside classroom, like my personal life. You know, like relationships with my family members and like my peers.
In your experience, did professors perceive your work and you as a student differently than they perceived a non-incarcerated student? What was that professor-student relationship like within, you know?
Man, I have professors now who no longer work for BPI, whom I go to cookouts in summer at their house, regular cookouts, so like they're my friends. It's very much, like I said, they very much treat you like a student. They hold you to the same standards as they do their students on campus. And then a lot of times they find that, you know, by and large, we come to class more prepared, having done more of the reading, having done, you know, maybe wrote 3 pages instead of 2, just because we had more to say. More driven about their education, and I think, you know, part of that is the fact that, like, it's this bright light in this dark world, so it's just really easy to run toward that light when everything else is like, you know, like dim and ugly. But, you know, by and large, like Tamika said, it's an escape for us. Education and academics, school becomes an escape for us. And so I think the professors a lot of times appreciated coming in and, like, you know, to, you know, not to take anything away from, you know, freshman class, you know, freshman college students, but to students who, you know, actually were really enthusiastic about stuff, whether it was, you know, even benign things like, you know, the anthropology and things like that, like Anthropology 101, which, you know, I think for some it's great, but like, I remember just being so excited about it. And so, I guess to answer your question, no, there was no difference. I didn't feel like they treated us any different. In fact, I feel like the way they treated us definitely made me feel like I needed to, like, step my game up and sort of push me to, you know, meet the standards that they set for us. And so I appreciated it, actually.
Yeah, I remember a few professors coming in and actually being surprised and shocked at the level of performance we had. And I remember one professor coming in and saying that he needed to be more prepared because he wasn't expecting us to be as prepared as we were. So, you know, it's different. Outside, you have a million and one distractions. You got your phone that has all these different things on it, and then you have just life, right? Indoors, well, for us, well, for my facility, we didn't even have computers. You know, we were handwriting 30 pages. So we didn't have any distractions. that were outside of like the regular prison and stuff. But once it was lock-in time, you know, you have the whole entire night to yourself, and that's the time where everybody's scrolling their phone and stuff, and we were sitting there writing papers and everything. So we had the extra time on our hands, and we knew what we wanted to do with it. So we used it wisely. And yeah, our professors was just like, they had to work a little bit more because they wasn't prepared. Like they figured they was gonna come in and we were just gonna be sitting there like some lumps or bumps on the rock or something. And you know, we showed and proved. And it was funny because when I came home and I went to college, I went to Lehman, and everybody, I have my books, like I'm ready to write. Everybody got these tablets and stuff, and I'm just looking around. And I happen to be glancing because there's no way in the world everybody's just like this and the professor's talking. And look, I see Facebook over here, Instagram over there, and I'm just like, I get it. I get it, I understand. Those distractions are really, that's it, they're distractions.
So we know that society is not always forgiving or redemptive. So can you talk a little bit about your reintegration into society? How do employers view your degrees and sort of like that?
So when we talk about reintegration, we're talking about housing, we're talking about jobs, we're talking about rekindling bonds with the family, we're talking about rebuilding your presence within your community, and a few other things, right? And it's hard, right? Like reentry starts at the time that they put the handcuffs on a person. You should start focusing on what it is you're gonna do when you return. Problem is, there's so many collateral consequences and damages that are in play. There's so many barriers if you have a felony on your record, if you did some time, and that holds you up with housing, with jobs, with education, right? The smallest things, even something like life insurance, right, is something that you really can't attain. So, life is getting a little bit better, right, with all the criminal justice reform that's been taking place in the last few years, with ban the box and a couple of other things. It's been a little bit easier for people who have records to be able to reintegrate into some things, but you really have to have like a strong support and networking system, right? Like with BPI, between BPI and I did another program, Rehabilitation Through the Arts. Between the two of them, I was able to come home and I networked with them. So when I got my first job, it was through BPI. I got my first speaking engagement, it was through RTA. When I needed help with housing, BPI was trying to help me to locate it, right? But we were fortunate. Not everybody that comes out of prison has that opportunity, has that type of support or something in play to actually kind of help them. So my first 2.5 years out of prison, it was pretty easy to navigate minus housing program. Like the housing part, I went into shelter, went into transitional housing, then I ended up with my own apartment. And that was because a coworker of mine happened to have been a landlord, and he rented to me. Prior to that, I had applied for maybe about 7 or 8 different apartments within the 5 boroughs, and I even went as far as to being like, it was down to 2 people for the apartment. And once they did the background check, and I'm a veteran, I'm an Army veteran, so that kind of gives me, it gives me a little leverage. But once the criminal background check went up, it just shot me all the way back down, and I didn't have the apartment, and I should have had it, right? So it's hard navigating, and again, you have to really be strong, because there's going to be a lot of doors that's going to close on you. There's going to be a lot of no's. It's going to be slamming them. No, boom, no, boom. There's going to be a yes at some point. You just have to be patient. Patience is definitely key. You have to be patient enough to have that yes come, or you gotta go out and get it yourself. And that's pretty much like what we had to do. Like I just started making my lane in the criminal justice reform field because they're not doing a background check. And if they do, they need me because I'm the closest person to the problem, which makes me the closest person to the solution. So why not have somebody who's already walked this walk and been through this life? Why not have them come and show you how it can be fixed, how it can be managed, right? So like that's why I mainly do what I do now. I always felt that children was the future, right? I love Whitney Houston. That was the greatest song of all. Like that meant a whole entire lot, right? I was a child at one time, and my future didn't help y'all future, right? When I was a kid, we had people who were like, hey, why you not in school? You know, it was a village that raised us. If I was walking down the street and I was cursing, somebody was jacking me up and bringing me back to my parent. If I was walking around, you know, pants hanging off me, throwing rocks or doing anything I wasn't supposed to be doing, my community stepped in. My generation, we failed you guys at that, right? We didn't, it's like an each one teach one. We didn't really teach y'all the way that we should have, right? We didn't really give y'all the support that y'all needed. And that's why it's so, stuff like this is very important to me, right? I have my nephew here with me today because like I speak to kids all over the U.S., right? And sometimes it's kind of challenging when it's something dealing with your own home. And you know, you guys look at your parents and be like, oh, well, I'm sure you gotta say something. Oh God, this is shut up, this is keep it down shut. Oh God, why she was talking to me, right? But it's like, she's really telling you what's really best. She's really telling you, right? And yeah, we don't want to listen to that. I didn't want to listen to my mother for a very, very long time. But as an adult, I realized what my mom was trying to tell me, what she was trying to teach me, what she was trying to save me from was all right. It was nothing to harm me. So now, you know, this is how I live my life. I live my life trying to help the people that are behind me not make similar mistakes, the same mistakes, just not even a mistake. If I can help you not bump your head, even though it shouldn't be because it's kind of like a crutch, right? You should allow somebody to bump their head so they can learn. I prefer not to bump. I don't really want the bump to happen, right? Like, I just really want to see our future better because you guys are going to be the lawyers, the doctors, you're going to be the politicians, you're going to be the people that's running this country. You're going to be the ones that are going to be dictating what's taking place, what's good, what's not, what should be happening, what shouldn't be happening. And I just hope that everybody is able to be well-rounded, right? Like, be well-rounded. Cultural anthropology was a great class. Because in cultural anthropology, you learned about different cultures, right? You learned that cannibalism is a way of life, right? People are, oh my God, it's nasty. But if you think about it, if there's nothing else on earth, then we're here and somebody needs to eat. I'm sorry, y'all, it's me and you. Right? I mean, they have to eat to survive, right? It's a way of life. It's something that we have to do, whether we want to or not. But if we want to get what we need to get, sometimes we have to, you know, we got to do some things that just may not seem cool, but at the end, it's going to help us, right? So it's just like, never take for granted the little that you have, because the little that you have is really a lot, especially when you no longer have it.
I had a privileged reentry. I know that my reentry story is the reentry story of many people. BPI definitely helped me, like many others, leverage our education and see a lot of opportunities out here. So like 39 days out of home, I had like my first job. I had a family foundation downtown, making decent money, and just sort of just like, you know, starting a different life. And so I received, you know, job, you know, help with employment. I received help with, you know, navigating other programs and resources. You know, and I was privileged in that way because he was right. Not everyone has access to those resources. You know, BPI would only help you with your BPI. other programs don't have the same depth that DPI does in terms of resources. And, you know, that's not to say that I didn't struggle. You know, there was one thing I didn't receive was enough mental health support when I re-entered, right? I went away when I was 16, and I came home when I was 28, and just trying to figure out how to be an adult when I've never, you know, technically been an adult in the real world. It was like overwhelming. You know, I couldn't prepare for the anxiety I would get when you know, the first few weeks when it would come across in the street. It would be almost paralyzing. I couldn't cross. I don't care if there wasn't a car in sight. I could not cross if the guy wasn't like for me. Like if it didn't say walk, I just couldn't cross. It was that paralyzing because I hadn't crossed the street in over a decade. And it just felt like if I crossed the street when I wasn't supposed to, I would get hit by a car. You know, logical, and I know, but like there were things like that I was experiencing that I'd never experienced before that I couldn't prepare for, and I didn't know how to sort of navigate it. My education definitely helped me take, you know, process that, sit with that, figure out, you know, that like I'm just having a reaction to something I haven't done in a long time. It's gonna go away, but there are a lot of instances in life where I don't know how I'm gonna react to someone in a situation because I've never been in that situation. And so mental health was something I felt that was lacking. Not just in my reentry, but in the reentry of a lot of people. It isn't necessarily always focused on, although in the past, fairly recently, this shit has been like more of a focus on mental health. That is where I struggled the most, was in the ways that I was unprepared for dealing with the real world, in the ways that the real world felt super overwhelming for illogical reasons, right? And there's not always like, oh yeah, you just have to do this to like get over it. You know, it's something that takes time to sort of work through, and that's something that time has taught me.
Thank you so much for your answers so far. So we're going to start taking questions from the audience. So if you do have questions,
We got a good one.
raise your hand.
There's a young lady in the center right here.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Masai Matale. You spoke a little bit about another program you took, or you were part of, called with something to do with arts, like
Rehabilitation for the arts.
Yeah, can you speak a little bit more about that, or what that involved?
So Rehabilitation Through the Arts is basically was a program that uses the arts, music, dance, playwriting, song, to help like with rehabilitation. So we did like character development. Through the character development, you know, you kind of learn about yourself. We expressed ourselves on paper. We did plays based off of parts of our lives that were a little traumatizing and stuff to help us work through things. It was just basically something to help us grow, basically. You know, get into yourself, figure out who you are, and what a better way to do it through singing and dancing and stuff, right? Like everybody loves music, I think, I hope, right? So it's like, why not? Poetry is great, right? Words just running off and expressing yourself. Like I just think that is just so beautiful. And that's what RTA basically, what it does. It just helps you to relearn yourself, get into yourself, and then take off in life.
RTA is dope. It's an arts therapy program. I did it. I learned modern dance. I did like a modern dance through RTA. And you know, it's just different ways of sort of like expressing yourself, also exploring yourself, and you know, getting in tune with different parts of yourself. But it's volunteer run, and that's one thing about prisons. It's just the best programs are always volunteer run programs. They're not programs that are run by the facilities themselves or people who come in because they care enough to come in and like do the work to help people, you know, better themselves. You know, BARD started as a volunteer run program and then became what it is. RTA is a volunteer run program. He does amazing work in women's prisons, men's prisons all throughout New York State, working to help people, you know, grow in like emotional intelligence and, you know, focus on their health, you know, grow, you know, for all intents and purposes.
I don't really have a question. I just want to say how much I'm like inspired by your work.
State your name now.
Yeah, I'm Elvis, and I just wanted to say how I'm inspired by your work because my group last night, we talked about how the formerly incarcerated people had a chance to become great. And I feel like I can relate to that in a sense because I'm a kid from the Bronx and the education there wasn't really great, but I came to this school from this program and it helped me like a lot. And I feel like now I just have to prove to myself that I can be great here. So I just want to say thank you for being here.
And thank you for being here.
My name is Ray, from the Upper West Side. But my question is, you guys talked about the adversities and the hardships you faced when you first got out, and like, what was the motivation that kept you going and not putting your head down?
Hope. That's, I think, one of the biggest things that I got from my education was hope. I realized like I had more options. There was things I could do. I was capable. So it was hope. It's that simple for me.
Opportunity. Definitely opportunity because, we already have stripes on our backs and just becoming, having a felony makes it even worse. So the education gave me more opportunity, and it actually gave me more opportunity to be able to just educate others.
Hi, I'm Sophia, and I'm also from New York. But I think I can speak for the majority of us by just saying that this is a really interesting issue for us to learn about and learn more about. But a lot of us don't really know where to start in taking action to amplify our voices and hoping to amplify yours. So I was just wondering if there was a piece of advice that you guys could give for us to take away and to put into action.
You start in your communities. You start where you're from. Look up organizations doing work right where you're from, right? Doing work in something that you're interested in, that you're passionate about. You can volunteer. They're always accepting volunteers. Volunteers usually end up eventually working for these programs and getting paid to do the work. But it also just puts you in a field of other people who are interested in the things that you're interested in. And that networking sort of leads to other opportunities and other growth. But like the easiest way is to always just look right where you are and see who's doing the work already and just joining them.
Also, conversation. Just, talking to your parents talk to their friends, you talk to some more of your friends, and the word of mouth travels. It raises awareness, which is a start. And pretty soon, some of you guys will be 18, you'll be old enough to vote. Paying attention to who's running for office, what it is that they plan on doing for people, period, right? Black, brown, poor, mental health. Right, there's a lot of things that politicians, and not even on at the minimum on the local level, right? Like knowing who your judge is, right? Because we vote for that. We vote for who our judge and our DA is going to be. We vote for the local offices, and those are the people who actually tend to us. Right, it's not really the president. The president is all the way up here. We're the little people, right? It's really our mayors, they got city council and stuff out here? No, this is Delaware, right? It's a different state, so I'm not. But like, it's just on your local levels where if you look at the ballots and stuff, there's things on the back of ballots, right, where they'll have different laws and stuff that are in play for people who have gotten a record or for schools, right? Because a lot of schools don't receive the funding that they should receive. And that's something that we should talk about, right? We should talk about how we need to start making sure the younger population has access to resources, right? We deal with a lot of trauma, we deal with a lot of mental and emotional things, right? Just being yelled at home can become traumatizing. We're just getting yelled at over and over again, right? And sometimes you start to build like anger and stuff inside of you. Or, you know, somebody might be being harmed at home, right? And he's stuffing that inside and they don't know how to, you know, they don't have an outlet. They don't have somebody to speak to or something. And then they end up becoming something unfavorable in life, right? And it's just because they're really hurting and stuff, right? So it's like looking around and noticing who the peers are, who's around you, because mental health is real nowadays, right? There's so many young people who are suicidal, right? There's so many young people who are feeling like they have the world on their shoulders and they don't know what to do with it and they need a way out. Right? So it's just like, just making sure that we pay attention to one another, because you guys are young, right? Right now, it's just really, you guys just really need to just like, know what it is to be a child, remember what it is to be a child, and then think about the children that are going to be coming behind you, right? And then just making life easier for yourself, right? I wouldn't say focus right now on trying to change the world, because you got to worry about changing yourself first, right? So it's just like, make yourself the best you that you can be, and through that, the you will reflect on everybody else that's around you in your circle, right? So it's like, it becomes contagious, right? You get a good spirit and you touch somebody and it passes on and it passes on and it passes on. Right? Sometimes when there's negative energy around, you can be the most happiest person, but that negative energy comes around you and now you're the most somberest person. So it's like, just try to keep yourself to be the best you and hope the people that are around you are you. Anything past that, as Gio said, look for any type of organizations or something that may be around that's helping out. And if not, we're in a day where technology, social media, and these things that y'all do on these phones, you can start your own organization or something, right? You can sit there and say, hey, I don't like how the sky looks today. Let's start up a petition or something. Let's change the color of the sky. Of course, we're not changing the color of the sky, but it could be something that you chose that you want to do, right? So if you, where's the young lady that asked the question? Where did she go? What is something that you would like to do in this situation?
I honestly just want to make sure that more people know about just how human everyone involved is, because I myself, just even being from New York, I didn't even know what the bar prison initiative was a thing, and I just really think it's important to set that up.
Everybody uses your phones, y'all on Snapchat and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and I'm trying to think of all of them. You guys are on like those social media platforms. You guys can use that, right? That's where everybody expresses themselves. That's where the voices are, and that's what reaches a lot of people. Depending, I guess, on your following. I don't know. I'm not really into social media, but I know that when I go on my phone, there's always a lot of information there, right? So information is for anyone and everybody. So you can post up on your pages, talk to your people and stuff, and then you can do like a podcast, right? You guys can start your own podcast where you start conversations up and you're having these conversations within just your peers, and then maybe you start bringing your family members and people from your neighborhood into it. But it's all about just spreading the information and making people aware. She's had a hand up for a while.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jada, and I have a couple questions, so I'll see you both on the meet and greet. But I think one that everyone should hear the answer to is having underwent the process of rebuilding a societal presence in the free world. You know the barriers that come with your identities, and even more the barriers that arise after having formally incarcerated on your record. So if there are certain barriers that you feel are unnecessary or unfair, like I want to know if you feel like such things exist. Like what things as a formerly incarcerated person do you not have access to that you need?
Just to point to something you said earlier, I think housing is a really big thing. I think there are a lot of barriers for housing for people who haven't been incarcerated in New York, or just maybe in the country overall. Like housing is a really hard thing to get. You gotta have like a, 700 credit score, $160,000 in the bank. Like, you have to make 40 times the rent. Like, the standards are oftentimes ridiculous, and so it makes it really hard to find like a home that isn't like in the projects, or isn't like a room in like the seedy part of town, like a dignified home. I think housing is a really big issue, and there are a lot of barriers for housing, and that's something that needs to be addressed. People who have no home are oftentimes in the street or bouncing from home to home, and that instability makes it hard to find a stable job. It makes it hard to pay your bills. It makes it hard to provide, that's housing is something that sort of affects a lot of other things, right? It's hard to have a job if you don't have an address, right? Things like that really get in the way of the success of people being trained, whether they have a college degree or not. It's just like basic, necessity.
And jobs as well. Sometimes you end up settling for something less than what you're worth having because of the background checks and all. Which is funny because I tried to get hired at Amazon. I couldn't get hired at Amazon. I'm still trying to figure that one out. For the life of me, I'm still trying to figure that one out. But so just the fact that I couldn't get hired at Amazon, right, is crazy because Amazon's supposed to hire everybody, right? And they give health insurance right off the first day, right? They give all these benefits and stuff. They help with college if you want to go in, but they're not for everybody. So that's almost any job, right? Sometimes, and not only do you settle for the job, but sometimes you settle for the way a person treats you on the job because, you need the job, you need an income. So you might end up being slandered and just like eat it because where else are you gonna go? So employment is definitely, and if you don't have any money, right, what happens? You tend to go back to what you knew before you went in, and then the cycle starts all over again. It becomes a revolving door. So education is not as much of a barrier anymore because they took that check off, and there seems to be a lot more institutions that are actually doing like college and prison type programs and stuff. So they're starting to get a little more on board. But housing and education, housing and jobs definitely is the barrier. And not for nothing, even, it's funny, in the medical field, even like I said, you can't get life insurance, right? Like, why does my wife have to suffer if something happens to me because we couldn't get life insurance, right? Like, that's big. There's so many people who go into debt because there is no life insurance to help bury their loved one.
I have an interesting one I want to add that I struggle with to this day. That I don't think just specific to people who are formerly incarcerated, but definitely people who are formerly incarcerated have, I think, experienced it to a greater degree. Imposter syndrome. It's something I struggle with in a lot of spaces I occupy. I'm oftentimes sitting in senators' offices, holding meetings with them for clients, and not taking control or asking, feeling as in command of the space that I'm occupying because I'm feeling like I don't belong or like I shouldn't be there, you know, like this isn't real for me, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm literally an imposter. I think that's something that I struggle with and a lot of people struggle with when you come from places that, you know, when you come from one place and end up somewhere where you don't even know sometimes how you got there, you know what I mean? It's like that sort of journey.
And I think the number one thing that I struggle with is I don't want to go back to prison. So because I don't want to go back to prison, there's times where I'll just like kind of like take a back seat or something because I have that fear of, oh well, what if takes place, right? So like I did 2 bids. I did a bid when I was a kid. A 42-year-old man tried to touch me and I tried to protect myself against him. And because I left and came back, I committed the crime. So I did that bid like with no problem. It was like, but then when I did this time as an adult, you know, it was different. Like I lost more, but I gained more. And it destroyed a lot of relationships, but then it built some relationships. And so now it's like I just don't want to leave, right? Like I don't want everything that I worked so hard for to just be taken from me again, or just for me to just give it up. So I try to do whatever needs to be done within the law, and then anybody that's around me, I kind of try to do it that way too. And if I feel like they might get me in trouble, I don't even deal with them anymore. So effects of prison kind of it's a lasting effect, right? Like it's something that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. I'm always going to see, think, smell my cell, my facility, right? Like it's always going to be right here. No matter how I try to put it back here, it's always going to stay right here. And trying to escape that is like my hardest thing.
I'm sorry, that was amazing. We want to appreciate you and thank you so much for being with us here today.
Come hang out.
Third woman, come down.
Yeah, there you go, third woman. I learned to be able to do that wage sticky wage. So, explain sticky wage.